Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by Golden Wings Horseshoes and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. Not many people sell a successful real estate company to buy a train company, but Al Harper did it. The CEO of American Heritage Railways, Al joins the podcast to talk about how his career path switched tracks and where trains have taken him.
Morning, Stephen. I guess Alan gets to take Memorial Day off, so
what the heck?
It's just you and me.
What the heck? I mean, I'm okay with that because basically what that tells me is we've got our guests just to you and I'm fine. I can't handle the heat from two of you, so having just one of you here is okay with me.
Yeah. Well, trains are a big deal to me. I've been on the Durango Silverton narrow gauge multiple times, but I got my first train experience when our parents bought us, as my dad worked hard in Europe, a Euro Pass, I think it was called, and you could go anywhere on the trains for a certain amount of time, and we traveled all of a good share of Western Europe when I was 16 or 17 years old. But then more recently, I've been on the Durango Silverton, so it's right in my interest zone there for sure.
Well, I'm sitting here reading the article in True West magazine, and he talks about the first train that he had when he was a little boy. And, the first train I had was my Lionel train. And one of the things I look forward during the holidays is my father would, and I would get to put the choo-choo train around the Christmas tree. And it was just a magical time. I'd lay there for hours watching that thing go around.
There is something. And so you remember, Stephen, of course, that guy who said he loved his electric razor so much he bought the company. And so today on our podcast, we got Al Harper. He loved trains so much he bought one. So really happy to welcome Al Harper. He was honored, I was there, as a true Westerner, 2024 version, at the Grand Palace in Old Tucson. And, of course, that's our favorite magazine, True West. We've got the article right here. And Al is a hero in Tucson because he and his family and company brought our iconic 1938-39 movie set, theme park, Old Tucson back to life. And it's just great to have you, Al. And why'd you buy the railroad?
Well, I've first of all, I've been very blessed in my life, and I've had a lot of adventures and gotten to pursue a lot of things, and truly appreciate you letting me be on with you and your podcast. The railroad was something that I can honestly say I didn't intend to buy. I was very active in promoting railroads in Florida, board of directors of Florida East Coast Railroad. And I was on the board of directors of what's called Tri-Rail, which is a transit railroad, and got to be chairman of that board for 3 different terms. But some people came to me and were trying to start a tourist railroad in Florida and wanted to use track time from one of the railroads that I was on the board of. And, of course, they said they'd give me a bunch of stock if I could get it done. And so I recused myself on the board and then worked with the 2 roads, and I got them track time and got this stock, and it would be Florida Tourist Railroad. And it turned out that they financially got in trouble, and they had bought the Durango and Silverton as a diversification from their Florida operation, and frankly, they needed to resell it to get some cash into their Florida program, and asked me if I would talk to the people they bought it from and see if they'd buy it back. It was a man named Charlie Bradshaw in Florida. I went to see Charlie, and Charlie said, no, he won't buy it back, but he knew I would take care of the railroad, so he'd finance it if I'd buy it. I said, well, Charlie, I don't have that kind of money. And he said, I'll finance it for you, and you can buy it. So lo and behold, I go into a conference room. I called my wife and said, how would you like to buy a railroad in Colorado? And she said, well, what do we need to do? And I said, well, we need to put a second mortgage on the house and second mortgage on our stock, then this real estate company we owned, and we can buy. And she said, well, you want to do it? And I said, let's do it. So I bought a railroad right then and there.
Wow.
That's a long story. It made very short. And I had to, Mr. Bradshaw did step up and provide the down payment. I had to assume a loan, and I went to the bank, and the bank said, well, I don't know, let us think about it. I got in my car to leave the bank, and they called me on my phone, your loan's approved. So lo and behold, I own a railroad, and that's where I went. What made it really work, though, again, I was blessed in life, a man named Warren Buffett. He had a company called Home Services, and they came and bought my real estate company in Miami, Florida. And that gave me the money to really make the railroad work and gave me the equity I needed to really get it going. And that was the start. That's how it began. And I fell in love with the Durango and Silverton. How could you not love this railroad?
Yeah, well, I've been on it, I think 3 times. So you bought it, do I have the fact right, 98, is that correct?
98 is when we closed on it. I was involved with it for a year earlier. It's been a tremendous experience. I love history, and there's nothing that's more iconic in Western heritage than the railroads coming west. That's what brought the country together. And for me to have an opportunity to be involved with this railroad and to get it going was a real treat, a real special time. But it was hard. Railroads just gobble cash. It's so expensive to maintain them. And then you take a railroad like the Durango and Silverton that everything I own is 100+ years old. There's nothing new about it. And so it's a real challenge. But what we discovered in this business is, one, we're preservationists. Our whole company is based on preserving history in everything we do, whether it's the Tucson movie studio or a railroad in Colorado. Number 2, we're educators because we understand the importance of history, that history is the key to our future. If we don't understand our past, we're bound and destined to fail in the future. And so we educate. But we also found out the best way to preserve history is to make its presentation so interesting and exciting that people will pay a fair price for a great experience. So we create great experiences in historic venues, and that's what our company's all about.
Well, it's interesting, Al. I talked to our guests here, and they basically parrot that. I mean, Russell and White Stallion have just gone out of their way to preserve history and educate the people that are here about horses, about the Western way of life, and railroads are such an important part of that.
Well, and actually, you probably don't know this because why would you really? But we're preservationists and dude ranches, and we have 6. And other than White Stallion here, 4 of those were taken out of either foreclosure or reopened after a prolonged closure. One was closed for 83 years, and so we share that love for history, and we totally agree. Not everybody has that, and we get that. So you got to make it interesting and fun. You're way ahead of us on that, but I was on the Durango Silverton apparently before you bought it, and it was I was there. I rode in on a service car, and I was going to a dude ranch called Awe Wilderness, which ended up, my understanding is a few years later absorbed by Tall Timbers, which was its next door neighbor.
Right.
But so that was my first trip, and then I did the real experience, and then I was back later after you bought it with my boys, I think a couple of times, because we love your railroad. And
well, you're a veteran, having gone to Awe Wilderness. That goes way back.
Yeah. That's before you owned it, right?
Oh, a long time before I owned it. And the Begro family took over Tall Timber, and now it's a soaring resort where, they do treetop soaring, and very successful. Very
No
successful.
kidding. Interesting.
Beautiful trip.
Well, and when I was there, the only way in there was on your railroad or a helicopter. Is that still the case?
It's still the case. The only way to get there is by the train or walk.
Yeah,
you can walk. But we're the only method of transportation, and they're a great customer. They usually have between 3,500 and 4,000 passengers that take the train up to Tall Timber, and the family's had a tragedy up there, and the father of the Begro family was killed in an automobile accident at Christmas Day, of all things.
Oh.
But they are persevering and moving on, and we're very proud of our relationship with the soaring operation at Tall Timber, and by all means, I appreciate what they've done to support our railroad.
Something that fascinates me, and I'm just really interested, your railroad is a narrow gauge railroad. How is that different than a regular railroad, and why specifically narrow gauge?
Well, narrow gauge was developed. Standard gauge in the United States is 4 feet 8.5 inches, and there's a lot of old stories about why was it 4 feet 8.5 inches. That's the standard gauge of most of Europe, and they say that was the width of a chariot in old Roman days.
Wow.
I have no idea that's true, but everybody laughs. That means that the standard gauge railroad was determined by the rear end of a horse. So maybe that's a true story or it's not.
I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
But the narrow gauge was developed because it was cheaper to build, and particularly when you get into the mountains and have to carve it out of cliffs and make sharp turns through the mountains, it was much more amenable to a 3-foot gauge than to standard gauge.
So narrow's 3 feet?
Narrow gauge. There are several gauges. Narrow gauge, usually it's 3-foot gauge, but if you go up into eastern United States, there are a lot of lumber railroads that are 2-foot gauge.
No kidding.
Wow.
So there's 2-foot, 3-foot, and standard gauge is the most common.
What was the Durango Silverton's that line? What was its first purpose?
Well, it was created by a man named General Palmer. General Palmer, an interesting gentleman. He wanted to take railroading into the West, and the Durango and Silverton line was originally called the Denver Rio Grande Western. And General Palmer bought it in. It was to reach the mines in the San Juan Mountains. And the San Juan Mountains are known for their mining for 4 main minerals: gold, silver, lead, copper, and zinc, were the minerals that were brought out of here. So the railroad was put in to bring the ores out and to take the supplies in that were needed. And Palmer was a really interesting man. He became a general in the Civil War. He got a Congressional Medal of Honor and was doing interdiction for the North into the South, raiding and tearing up bridges and railroad tracks. And so he was captured, held as a prisoner of war by the South. He escaped, put a group together, and did it again, and started raiding again. And for all that, he was awarded a Congressional Medal. He used his fame, though, really in developing railroads, and he raised a lot of money in the East and actually in London to build and finance and build the railroad here. And he was really an interesting guy. He accomplished a lot and is very well known in Colorado.
Interesting, and he seems like he's one of those that, from a nationwide audience perspective, probably hasn't gotten his due if he did all that. But I got to circle back because I didn't finish my thought. Railroads and dude ranches, railroads, Great Northern, Burlington, down here, the Santa Fe, really had a big role in getting dude ranching's word out. The dude ranches started in the late 1800s, really hit their stride in the early 1900s. And in 26, the Great Northern supplied the money, expertise, and I guess voice to dude ranching and created the Dude Ranchers Association. So railroads and dude ranches were really big partners in the early days. So as a dude rancher, we have extra appreciation. So
Well, I appreciate what you all do. White Stallion is probably the most famous in Arizona, isn't it?
well, I don't know, but
He would never admit that,
Thank
even
you.
if he knew it to be true, Al.
there's
Well, let's just say
some other
I'm calling it true.
well, there's some really great ranches in Arizona, and we're kind of pleased to be in their company. But we're going to take a quick break. We're right there at that point, and then we'll be right back. I was standing at the corner of the tack room as I do, calling names and getting rides out, and I watched one of our horses sort of jauntily, I almost prance, head out the corral and with a guest on his back, and it was that moment where I thought, boy, he didn't look like that a couple of years ago, and it just took me back to the fact that Golden Wings horseshoes are really game changers for some of our horses, and that was one of them. The concussion absorption and the flexibility combined to put that horse back on the trail and with a prance in his step, and it's good for us because we get horses back out on the trail with the right mind and the right experience to take care of our guests. But even more importantly, I think if you step back and look at it, is what it does for our horses. And so goldenwingshorseshoes.com. Fred, thanks for making these horses feel so much better. So how many, do you have a sense how, here in Arizona, we've got a great tourist railroad, the Grand Canyon Railroad, that some folks, Max and I forget her name, they basically resurrected the town of Williams and helped the National Park Grand Canyon with traffic without the steady stream of cars. It has a really important role in northern Arizona. How many tourist trains are there now? Do you have any sense?
Yeah, it kind of goes up and down because some succeed and some don't. But there's around 225 tourist scenic historic railroads of one sort or another in the United States today. And you mentioned Grand Canyon as one of the most outstanding. They do a terrific job down there. We partner with them to do the Polar Express at their railroad. We have the rights to Polar Express, and we do that at 54 railroads in the United States, Canada, UK, and we've opened in Australia. So we're proud to work with Grand Canyon Railroad, and they're really terrific people, and that's a great ride.
Well, and, I can throw some real-life experience on top of that. I'm a grandpa-age daddy of a 6-year-old girl, and so her mother said, we're doing the Polar Express this year. That just looks like something that can't be missed. So we did that last, when she was 5. Yeah. And it was a huge hit and a great experience.
Yeah. So. Did you do Grand Canyon?
Yes, we did. We went up there, and I'm not a big fan of the cold, so other than the cold, it was perfect. So.
Well, they're great people, and I appreciate you supporting that effort. It's that kind of the Polar Express is the kind of thing we need to do because it generates such interest with young people. And it's so important that we involve young people in these historic Western railroads. So I'm pleased that you went, and I know you appreciate how it gets the young people excited about trains.
Oh, well, let me tell you, she loved it. So you can't overstate it, and it's, and obviously for Grand Canyon it's super timing, because it's, that we had very few opportunities to choose from, because that thing was booked up. So anybody listen, you want to do Polar Express, get out ahead of it, because it does book out. We had to get what was left when we finally had the good idea to try it. You talked a lot about, these things are expensive. Is steam a lot more expensive than modern diesel?
Yeah. Say that again. I couldn't hear you.
You talked a lot about these things, and they fail because they're expensive, these railroads. Are the steam locomotives a lot more expensive? I mean, they're all old. I mean, you've got everything's 100 years old.
Our newest steam engine actually celebrated its 100th birthday this year.
That's the new one.
That's the newest one. We do run diesel engines to support our steam program, and we'll do a double header. And actually, to get up the mountain to save the energy on our steam engines, we'll connect a diesel and pull too. So we run both, but steam is our primary motive power here, and we're very proud. We have a fleet of 9 steam engines, and they're great pieces. They come alive. They're alive. They're not just machines. They're alive.
I love it. I love it. I'm sitting here, and I love the passion that you have for what it is you do. And as soon as you started talking about the Polar Express, Russell's eyes lit up, and he had a big old smile on his face. So that must have been something that was really, really worthwhile. So, in doing this, I mean, what's been the biggest challenge you've had?
Well, probably the biggest challenge is you have to, when you're doing wilderness railroading, you just know that, and you budget for at least one crisis every year, whether it's a forest fire, a rock slide, or you name it. Wilderness railroading is tough. Yeah. And so we really plan for it. We're prepared for anything that can happen, and even budget for it, because we just know you don't know what the weather, what the seasons will bring. And so I think just dealing with the wilderness and the track through the wilderness is probably the hardest thing, and closely followed by everything's old. Everything is constantly needing to be upgraded and repaired.
We've got some dude ranches like that, let me tell you. Rancho de Losa, the newest guest accommodation, this is the real numbers, 96 years old. Everything's adobe.
Wow.
I mean, it's got the oldest building in Arizona of European origin. Yeah, we know. Not at your scale, because I've been on your train, and man, that is some spectacular rough country.
Well, you're getting me, so now I got to come to one of your ranches. I got to see this.
Well, you're invited. Rancho de la Osa, most historic place in Arizona.
Yeah, it's. I was talking to someone this morning, and I said, we were talking about Rancho de la Osa, and I said, the bar there is one of the oldest buildings in the entire state of Arizona. He goes, I didn't know that. I said, yeah. I said, that's absolutely a fact. I said, and it's pretty remarkable. Al, some of my favorite movies now are Westerns, and I love the Dances with Wolves, and so many of these iconic Western movies have, one of the things that's featured in them is trains. And like you said, the impact that trains have had on America and building the company that we have. And when you think about trains and Westerns, you've got to think about Jesse James.
Well, I grew up in Missouri. People call him an outlaw. He was a hero in Missouri.
Now, how so? What does that mean?
He came from Missouri and was actually killed in Missouri. And it's just, he's always been everybody plays cowboys and Indians. Well, in Missouri, they all want to be Jesse James.
That's pretty awesome. So,
yes.
What are we not asking that you want to tell us? Because you're a wealth of information in this particular area.
Well, you know what I wanted to talk about, because it means so much to me, is Old Tucson Studio. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, you have railroads, you have historic buildings and historic hotels in the West and so forth, but what about Old Tucson? Why did you do it?" Well, it's really simple. Old Tucson probably did more to sustain the Western culture and bring it to the masses than anything else that's ever happened. There are over 400 movies and television shows filmed at Old Tucson. And it got disarray, and then probably the death knell to it was COVID in 20. It was owned, and it's still owned by Pima County, but they put out an offer for people to make bids to operate it. And we were so impressed after looking at the facilities. We just thought that we could turn it around and bring it back to life like it was meant to be. And so we've invested quite a bit, working well with Pima County, and we've opened it up. Our first year, we had over 100,000 visitors. Our goal is to get it up to 200 to 300,000 by year 3. We're working hard on it and doing some fun things. We're doing some events that they used to do for Halloween and for Christmas, but we're expanding them, make them better, and just renewing it. And we're working hard to bring movies and television production back. We've been really excited. We've been working with Kevin Costner on his new string of movies, Horizon. We're excited. We just had him filming here in Durango just last week. What an impressive individual. I really enjoyed getting to spend a few hours with him on set, and really excited about that. And that's the kind of talent we're trying to have him consider, and several other movie productions consider going down to Old Tucson and help us bring that back to life. So Old Tucson's a great place. I hope people will come visit. We've recreated the old shows in the Grand Saloon. We're doing stunt shows. We're doing all sorts of things, and a wonderful Western experience, but also never forgetting our movie history and our Western history there. So I'm excited about Old Tucson.
Well, Al, you know, and I don't say this lightly. Honestly, I'm not a puffer. I don't, you know, do the big story. But you're a hero in Tucson. It was funny because a friend of ours, John Schaefer, he says, you know, I've got a rumor that I'm pretty sure is accurate. And he says, I put the pieces together, and Al Harper of the Durango Silverton's going to take over Old Tucson. And I said, John, I said, he's got to be way too smart to do that. And that's just got to be too big of a mess to unravel. And sure enough, about a week later, it was true. And people are so, you know, people who care about Tucson have some history. You know, most of us are transplants in some fashion, but Old Tucson was always right there on the marquee with the Desert Museum, our world-renowned zoo and botanical garden and all the things that the Desert Museum really is world-renowned for. But your neighbors, and it was such a great quinella to have a movie studio / theme park next to a world-class zoo and botanical garden, and you've given it back to us. And everybody, and I'll say one other thing. I went to the True West event honoring you, and I don't even like live theater. I don't know why. I'm just not smart enough, or I'm too shallow or something. And what a nice job that Billy the Kid thing. It was just so well done. And I thought, wow, they've really elevated this. So, you know, you guys are getting it done.
I was so concerned about that play because it's a very serious play, but it really portrays the kid's life, you know, and it ended up people really received it with a lot of you know, honors, and I'm glad that happened. I have to say, my son John Harper is now he handles all our day-to-day operations and our various activities. And Old Tucson is something that he's putting his heart and soul in. And so the Harper family, led by John, is really going all out for Old Tucson. And you're going to see a lot of improvements this year. You're going to see a whole lot of improvements. We're doing a lot to make sure, again, I'm so into making sure the families are welcome. We're doing a lot so that families will definitely want to go and enjoy some new rides, enjoy some new features, but then learn about the history of the movie business and what it meant for the West. So I'm excited about this year for Old Tucson.
Excellent. Go ahead.
My English father-in-law just watches Grit all day long, and whenever we are over at his house, I just look over, yep, Old Tucson, yep, Old Tucson. And, of course, with the law back where there's at least finally some tax incentives, and I'm not a big fan of that conceptually, but Arizona had to have it to compete because otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think you're so smart, not that I'm an expert by any means, to bring back that movie piece because it's what gains the PR and re-engages people, and they want to go and see the place that such and such was being filmed. So
Sure.
it's really
Sure.
it's going to take Old Tucson right back to the top of the marquee.
And
listen, I really appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to share my dreams and share my excitement about the West and about what we've done to preserve history. And you and I, all of us need to get together in one place and share our stories of what we're working on.
Well, we're in. Steve handles a lot of things for White Stallion, marketing among them, and we're always, the rising tide, it's that's not false. In Tucson.
Yeah.
Misses some opportunities, and we're such a great place, and Old Tucson needs to be really top of that list. So anything other than just the ongoing stuff, anything in the near term that we need to talk about Old Tucson?
Future projects?
We do have I'm not allowed to talk about a couple of things because we do a lot with Warner Brothers, and I'm not allowed to talk about some of the stuff we're doing with them. But I just want to stress to everyone that listens to this broadcast, we have so much to be proud about in America, and the West is really symbolic of all the greatness that this country has to offer, and it's not only the beautiful mountains and the deserts and so forth, but it's the spirit of the West that maybe is the greatest symbol that we have to offer to the world. And I just hope everybody will continue to support our preservation of our Western history and support organizations like yourselves with your ranches and us with our railroads and various endeavors, because it's important for our future that we understand our past. So that's my biggest message.
God, Al, I could spend a day with you and I would just wonder where it went. What a great message at the end. Thank you for that.
And we'll end with that because that was perfect.
That was.
And that's a wrap from the White Stallion Dude Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, just 20 miles from Old Tucson Studios. A shout out to Stan Houston's production team. Check out our Instagram and Facebook pages for some cowboy reels and cowboy chats by Real Cowboys. And join us for more talk about the West. Until we meet again, this is Lynn Weezy Sneed reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.
Storm rolled in from the western sky. 2,000 head of steers took flight. Good night, pain. those boys to ride. And by damn they would, though some might die. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and going strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. She's 10 years old on a stout bay horse. 300 years they guide her course from the Spanish quest to the blue and gray, to what we call the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye,
don't say goodbye
to the cowboy way.
To the cowboy way.
Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and going strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Rawhide and steel, hooves and horn, legacy to the yet unborn. A code that comes from a hard-lived life. The destiny when you're born to ride. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and going strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye,
don't say goodbye
to the cowboy way.
And all of us at the Cowboy Up Podcast, we tip our hats and say thank you to Jim Jones and the Posse for that wonderful theme song we get to play all the time. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way.